Oh man, I've tried to record this so many times, the audio for this, and I kept trying to re-record it. And I'm just gonna go with this. I finally got my Kaikan 1cc, and I think I just wanted to use it as an opportunity to kind of just like shoot the shit about. I've been playing shmups now for a year, and just how I've been feeling about them, and what I like about it, and how much I've improved and how much progress I've made. And I really feel like this genre is the genre of games that I've kind of been looking for, even though it's been right in front of my face forever. Um, and I'm just glad I finally found it. Because I've always been kind of competitive with games. I I always wanted to improve at them, and I always liked a really challenging game, just because it always felt like I could have something to strive for, to improve at. That uh, I could always say that I was getting better. I might always like that with like everything in my life, I guess. Like when I got into writing music, it was always never good enough. I always had to just constantly feel like I was improving, and that's why music was awesome, because it felt endless. It felt like I could always get better. I could always improve, and I could always write better music, and learn more about music to write better music. So it's like that hobby stuck with me for my the whole life now. So uh, shmups are really similar to that for me, where it's a game where I just feel like a series of games where I just feel like I can always get better at them. It's so good to have that feeling where I can see my progress, but you can always just see that the mountain, keeps getting steeper the more you go. And to me, that's not a hopeless feeling. That's an awesome feeling. It's like, wow, this is just something I can constantly come back to, and always feel like I'm getting something new out of it that I didn't before. And scoring systems are just like the thing I've been looking for this whole time with games, that it was right in front of my face this whole time. And I finally seen that light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I'm definitely becoming a score player more than a survival player. I mean, that this run should be an indication of that anyway. I mean, you could probably finish this game on a survival run with barely any points, but I mean, I don't see the point for me to do that, because it's like this game is so oriented towards scoring in such a simple but effective way, and it like really improves the game so much, and like to be like how you can just milk these bosses for so many points by making the fight go longer, which makes the fight harder for sure. And yeah, I just really scoring just really started clicking with me as I've been playing shmups. But it has to be the game that I feel like playing and scoring. Like that's something that dawned on me with shmups. Just I don't want to say just recently, maybe like a couple months ago, is that I don't really care about 1cc checklist clears or anything. I mean, I want to clear games. I want 1cc games that I think are interesting and fun, not just any game, just to say I cleared it. And B, I want to get like a competent score in the games that I find interesting, because it's like, why am I playing this game that I find interesting if I don't want to explore it more than a very surface level? It's like, if I find the game interesting, I'm going to want to score it, I think, unless the scoring system is awful. But if the scoring system is awful, I probably wouldn't find it that interesting anyway, with just how I am. Um, it's funny because coming to shmups has been kind of like a return to my own childhood in a way, because I'm 35, so when I was playing games as a little kid, from like ages 5 to about 10, I only really played Japanese arcade styled games, but I never played shmups back then. But I was always in that mode of playing these kind of like challenging old Japanese console and arcade styled console games. I had a Mega Drive when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I played NES at my grandma's house when I was even younger than that, I think. And I didn't really get into like easier I guess like more Western styled games until probably I was a teenager, and I I kind of fell down that rabbit hole of like playing World of Warcraft and games where you had like loot systems and constant like treadmills and things like that. And then what was funny was that transitioned me into playing Western games that were competitive, because I always liked those difficult, challenging, competitive games. I've always been competitive myself. That's just kind of how I am. But I got into that by playing, stuff like Dota 2 and League of Legends and, games of that nature with my friends. And like that was kind of filling in that gap of these sort of games, but not quite, because you always needed your friends to be there with you to play it. And, it was a whole different can of worms with those styles of games too. So really coming to shmups recently was like a return to my childhood in that regard, of like the games I did really like and you playing as a kid. And I don't remember why I stopped playing them, other than I guess like circumstance and social situations, I mean, I think this was always going to be an inevitable conclusion though, because in my mid-20s I was really into playing traditional roguelike games, and that's, they have like permadeath and scoring system, some of them, and I think it was almost inevitable that I would end up here, because those were the games that were catching my interest, then, of like single player competitive style, difficult hardcore games or whatever. And it's just what I was never really playing, I guess you could call like mainstream AAA games. Even in my teenage years, I was, just into what I liked, and I just played what I liked, because gaming was always like a hobby of my own back then, where it was, kind of isolated, and I only had a couple friends who also gamed like that, so I never really had that issue of like, how modern people nowadays complain about modern AAA and it's all garbage and horseshit and whatever. It's like I never really had that problem, because that was just never what I was playing. I never really cared that much. It's like I either was playing the games I liked, or I wasn't playing games. So I guess yeah, I guess that's all a lot of rambling to say that shmups were kind of an inevitable thing that I would have come around to anyway. I think I would have discovered these games at some point, no matter what, just because of my proclivities. But it's kind of funny. I remember, I think that I always knew shmups existed to some degree. I remember I heard the name Dodonpachi a long time ago, and I don't even know. Like I would always see shmups in arcades and stuff when I was a kid, even though I never played them. And I mean, I remember hearing the name Dodonpachi. Just I forget how, really. I didn't know what kind of game it was. People were like, oh, that's a shoot 'em up, and I was like, what the hell's a I didn't even know what a shoot 'em up was. I knew there were space games where you had ships and you fly around shooting stuff. I knew what Gradius was and stuff like that, and I just didn't know the genre name, I remember a good buddy of mine linked me, because I've always loved video game music, and I remember he linked me the soundtrack for Battle Garaga. And like I guess being into shmups now, it's kind of funny to think back of when I first heard of that soundtrack. I was like, I love this music, but just I remember seeing the name, that super English name, and the title graphic screen with those like old looking 3D models of the ships, and I thought it was like just some like old jank shovelware type Japanese game that like just happened to have a really awesome soundtrack. I had no idea about shmups, so I was like, I just saw that and I was like, oh, this is probably some like jank shovelware game that just happened to have an awesome soundtrack, and it's like funny to come into shmups now and see it's like this revered title and all that was like one of the greatest shmups of all time. I mean, I haven't played it yet, so I can't really comment on Battle Garaga's quality or whatever from a personal standpoint, but it is just funny to think of it that way, where I just thought it was like, oh, there's awesome music to this game that's probably some jank Japanese shovelware. You know, very funny. I die here in very stupid fashion. I should not have died to this boss. But yeah, I mean, I started shmups when I started playing them this year. I started with Psycho, of all things. I started with the Psycho games on Steam, and in retrospect, starting with Steam, Gunbird 1 was probably a good move on my part, considering what I would want to get out of these games and like what I want to eventually strive for in these games. 'Cause it taught me a lot of like fundamentals of just playing shmups, of dodging and, you know, stringing bullets and tap dodging, and it was a good introduction for me. It was hard as hell when I first started out, because it was like, this game is not trying to hold my hand like in any way. It's like but I think in the long term it was like eating your vegetables. It was just, you know, good for me. It was I'm glad I went in that direction, at least for my goals. I mean, everyone's different in what they want out of any games they play, you know. And like, I've always been the type where you know, I'm competitive with stuff, but I've never been like, and I don't know why, I've just never been the type to be like, I have to be number one. I just have always been the type of like, if I'm amongst the better or the best of people in something, I'm okay with that. Like, if I'm in the top 10%, I'm cool with that. You know, I just means I tried and I put in effort and I got somewhere with it. You know, I'm cool with that. If I can be pretty competent in something, I'm fine with that. Which is like, I mean, this score even, it's like, I ended up with a 449 million, and it's like, yeah, it's not the best score in this game, obviously. I mean, there's scores in the billions in a billion in this game, you know. But I mean, I'm in the top end of the Steam scores, and I want to keep improving my score. I want to go over the 500, 600 million. I think that's easily doable, because I could correct my mistakes, you know, that I did on this run, and I could improve in this game easily. I could easily see myself getting higher than what I did, but it's cool. It's still cool for me to see that, oh well, I did like, well, I did, you know, a pretty decent score, all things considered. And it's like, that's all I could ask for, you know. Like, I want to improve more. I definitely want to come back to this game and score higher, because I know I can. And that's another cool thing, is like, the more you play, the more you improve, where you kind of know where your own, you know, limits are, or you know how far you think you can push it. And that's a really cool feeling too. Like, I feel like that with Futari Black Label especially, where I kind of know where I'm at, and I know where I can go further, and what my little short-term and longer-term goals are, and I think they're doable. It's cool to think of it that way too, of like, see how far you've come, and see how like things you once thought were, you know, impossible, are actually like pretty doable if you just set very reasonable goals for yourself and slowly work towards them, you know. I think shmups were a good experiment for me this year, and I want to keep with them. It's nice to have a new hobby that I feel pretty comfortable with, that I will probably stick with, because it just, everything about these games suits my personality and, you know, what I like about games. So I definitely am going to be sticking around for quite a while with these games. The community's been awesome too. They're all been super interesting people, and, you know, cool to talk to, and they've all been very helpful. There's been a bunch of community members that have, you know, helped me with my own runs, and how I'm, you know, wanting to improve my score. And as long as you know, show that you have like a real, you know, desire to get better, they've been, you know, nothing but helpful. So I have nothing but good things to say about the shmup community. I mean, every community has their, you know, quirky people and stuff, and especially in niche communities like this. But, you know, I personally have, you know, experienced nothing but cool people in this community, and I'm glad for that, you know, and people who actually want to talk about games and the gameplay, you know, I mean, because that's just what I care about with games, you know, it's just the games themselves. I'm not much of a story person with video games, never have been. I just only really cared about the gameplay and how the game, you know, getting better at games and mastery of games, you know, that's, I love games of all kinds. I love tabletop games, card games, board games, you know, and video games. They're all games to me. It's just like I love the learning a rule set and, you know, trying to master that rule set, you know, within the confine. That's why shmups are so cool, is because like within the limited confines of these rule sets, there's so many ways to play within them, and, you know, ways to improve and little changes that make, you know, just the biggest difference. I love that shit. Oh man, I really just fucked up this boss. I kind of just was. I at this point in the run, I was like, I have 2 lives. I'm just gonna, you know. I mean, I still score slightly here where I kill the wings of the TLB, but I was just like, let me cheese this shit with bombs and speed killing. I just want to get a clear. I mean, that's like, again, like I can score so much higher if I really put in the time to, you know, learn this fight, and I will eventually. But it's all, like I said, it's all a matter of slowly realizing what your goals are and working towards them with this genre. You know, you don't have to just, oh, I need to get this now. You can set yourself these small goals of like, I just want to clear with a decent. All I wanted to do is clear this game with a score over 400 million, because I knew I could do it with where I was at, and, you know, that's what I did. So I want to improve further with it. I want to get over 500 and get over 600, but for now, this was cool for me, so I'm fine with that. But yeah, this genre has been a trip. It's been an enjoyable experience, and I hope to have new clears coming and new games to get excited about. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in the community who's talked to me about these games and provided me with a lot of insight and, you know, just good vibes and good times. So thanks for watching, and hopefully more to come.